Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies have been on a roller coaster ride this week. There's been a lot of action in the Bitcoin price, a lot of action in the altcoin market. So let's take a look and see what's going on this week with Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency markets. So Bitcoin has been in the range, and we'll look at that in a minute, in that 47,000 to 50,000 range, 46.5, 46.7, whatever it was. We'll look in a minute range. And some of the altcoins have been on a blistering pace lately. So let's take a look at the last 24 hours here in terms of what's been up. And you can see some of these coins just in the last 24 hours have been up 28% across the board. Some of them 7 to 10%, some of them 28%. But one of the issues is, why can Bitcoin not break 50,000? What's going on? And here's one of the reasons right here. When you just look at the last 90 days, look at some of the coins over the last 90 days. So we're talking about June, July, August. We're in the first part of September here, September the 2nd. And look at this. Axie Infinity is up 1,537%. Terra's up 398%. Quant is up 322. Arweave 246. Solana 234. I had a good little trade in Solana. We'll talk about that in a minute. But look at these things. Some of these things are just up incredible amounts, and Bitcoin is nowhere to be found in this list. So that's one of the issues that Bitcoin is facing. Bitcoin's up 33% year to date. All of these other coins are just blowing it out of the water. Ethereum's only up 40%. So your two top coins are barely making a dent in gains over the last 90 days. Now let's look at year to date. Year to date, look at some of these percentages. Telcoin, 13,000, almost 14,000%. Axie, 12,000% year to date. Polygon, Matic, 8,000% this year. Solana, 6,700%. Dogecoin, 5,000, on and on and on down the list. And let's see where Bitcoin and Ethereum fall on that list of year-to-date gains. And this will provide you some insight in why they're a little bit sluggish. 67% year-to-date, which isn't bad. Ethereum's up 400% year-to-date, which is fantastic. But when you compare it to some of these other coins, Cardano is 1,592% year-to-date. It's just incredible, some of the gains. Dogecoin up 5,300% year to date. Solana 6,800% year to date. So that's one of the issues that Bitcoin and Ethereum are facing in terms of really turning on the afterburners and rocketing out of orbit, is that there's so many other options out there that capital is flowing into in the altcoin space. And then when you add NFTs and gaming and DeFi and all these other areas and avenues for the capital flow into, it creates a lot of competition for that dollar and for that capital. At the end of the day, the capital has the loudest voice. So let's take a look at the charts here. There's a lot of great news. So the cryptocurrency market, extremely bullish news for cryptocurrencies, extremely bullish news for NFTs. That space is just the wild west right now. People are making huge money. But again, that is an area that you can get caught. So you have to be careful. Some of those things are going to end up just flat out worthless. At some point, it's a huge boom right now. A lot of people jumping into it. But let's take a look at Bitcoin here. As we said, what have we been doing the whole time since we came down the mountain from 65? We've been ranging. Initially, it was in that 35 to 40,000 range. Then we dropped down to the 30 to 35,000 range, 28 to 30,000 range. We got a little tight. Then we ultimately bounced at 29,000. So why did we bounce at 29,000? Why did we bottom there and go on this tear and not be able to follow through and continue with that momentum? This is all institutional driven. The reason we bounced off the bottom was that the institutions that were accumulating here, that's what you got to understand. This was your accumulation phase to mark up and distribute where we're at now. That's why they stopped it right there, because they were accumulating in that 30 to 40,000 range. And as soon as the institutions stopped accumulating and let retail jump in, it started going off the cliff, and it would have gone much further down if it wasn't for the institutions jumping in here and pumping the price up. and distributing across the top here. And what's really interesting is this price action that we're in right now is following right along with the price action right here, coming off of the accumulation phase that we were in all along here in early 2020, leading up to the bull market of 2021. There was this accumulation phase that took place with the markup phase all the way through the top, distribution, and then ultimately dropped down as people realized that the top was in right there at 65,000. The market just lost steam, lost strength. And now with the institutions pumping this up, and when you look at the hourly, you can really see the price action that we're talking about here, and how if not for the institutions and these giant pumps here, Bitcoin would not be where it's at, and it would have fallen off a cliff completely back when it was at 28, 29,000 back here in July. Our initial pop right here, it was a big pump, a little bit of a pause, big pump. Then we had some more accumulation, mark it up, a little bit more accumulation, mark it up, a little bit more accumulation. So what else is going on while this is happening? So what's happening is the institutions are making making a lot more money in altcoins, large cap alts. So as Bitcoin goes up, they mark it up from their accumulation, sell off to retail. This is your retail action in here. Retail runs out of gas, price drops, institutions pump it back up, they distribute again, price drops. And these are stop hunts, stopping out the shorts, stopping out the longs. That's what happened here the other day. $400 or $500 million worth of shorts got their lunch eaten, got their lunch handed to them right here. So as soon as that took place, it runs out of gas and price drops. And now we're back into this little phase here, and price, once again, will continue to drop until the institutions decide to pump it up. So the question is, how long can they keep that going? If you run out of shorts to stop out and you run out of longs to stop out, at some point, this whole thing has to run out of steam and you have to reset the whole market. But what's going on is the money that's accumulated in Bitcoin is then rolled over into the altcoin market, and then it rolls back into Bitcoin. And you can kind of see that as Bitcoin drops, drops, the altcoins pump, and as the altcoins drop, Bitcoin pumps. And you can go back and look at the time frames, and some of the price action is identical across the altcoin market, especially Bitcoin and Ethereum. You can see that the exact same amount of moves at the exact same times around the exact same times and days for almost the same percentage of pumps are happening. The drops are a little bit different because there's a little bit more retail support for Ethereum than there is in Bitcoin. Bitcoin, the reason it can't break through 50,000 is because there's no buyers. There's no support to drive this through. There's no appetite to drive Bitcoin through at 50,000, meaning there's lack of belief in the price. There's lack of value, perceived value at 50,000 and up. There's just no interest. Everybody wants Bitcoin at sub 40,000, and that's what a lot of the retail is waiting for. They got burnt over here at 60,000. Most people were paying attention. They get it now. They understand it. They realize that Bitcoin at 50,000 is kind of the top of the range. So they're waiting for it to drop back down. And that's kind of what the institutions are doing. They're doing two things. They're keeping the price propped up because they accumulated in the 30s and the 40s. So they have to keep price propped up a little bit. They're making money in alts and distributing along this 50,000 range. So they're in price discovery. They're trying to find out who's buyers at 50,000. Very few people are buying at 50,000. There are a lot of whales accumulating, but you got to understand the whales have a very low basis. So when they accumulate at 45, 50,000, their average is still very, very low. So they're the only ones that can really afford to do it, but they're not big enough buyers to keep the market propped up. That's why it keeps dropping. So a lot of what's going on is the market will drop, institutions will accumulate and distribute to whales across the top because they know the whales are buying and there's very little retail. They know that the retail wants to buy down low. So they're making money in the altcoins, throwing it back into Bitcoin. The question is, now, where are we in the cycle? Are we getting ready for another huge pump, another altcoin pump? Is Bitcoin setting up for a huge run? So there's two schools of thought. Several people are expecting Bitcoin to just rocket through to an all-time high here in the next couple of days to start its move up. And some people are calling for Bitcoin to roll over and continue the drop down and take the rest of the market with it. Some people are thinking it's time for the altcoin market to start rocketing and make its run But we've had some pretty big moves since July in the altcoins. Ethereum has moved from basically 1,700 back up to $3,800. Cardano has moved from $1 back up to $3 it hit today, and it immediately retracted. That was a great play right there. That was one of my plays. One of the trades that I took was Cardano. Solana was my most recent trade. I exited Solana today at $128. So that was from 22 to 128. So that was a great little trade, but I am now out of Solana and I'm back in cash again, waiting for entry, waiting for everything to pull back right now. And I could be wrong. Market may not pull back. It might continue on. If that's the case, then I'll jump back in on some things where I see some good entry. But pretty much everything has been on a tear for the last 2 months since that bottoming out period of July. It's just been straight uphill for pretty much everything across the board. So the question is this run complete? Have we finished this run, this cycle right now, or is there more upside? That's the question everybody's asking right now. So here's something that's interesting to look at. We know this price action looks a lot like the top before 65. You have this little bounce here and it's starting to roll over a little bit, kind of like you had right here, where the price sort of rolled over, dropped down, consolidated, dropped some more. We're kind of making that arc right now to where it's touch and go. But here's the real issue right here. Is this a double top? We keep tapping that 50,000 ceiling. We tapped it over here. We tapped it over here, and we haven't been able to break through. So what happens when you have a double top like that? Does it continue up or does it continue down, and does it have to do anything? Of course, price doesn't have to do anything. So what we want to look for is we want to look for trends in the market where we've seen similar action. That 50,000 level is a huge level of resistance and support all the way across, going all the way back to February of 2021 for Bitcoin. And where have we seen similar price action? Well, we've seen it here at the 40,000 level, where 40,000 was a big number all the way across. It was a big level of support and resistance. And when price could not break through that $40,000 level, like we see right here, we had to double tap. We could never get back and break through. Price rolled over and continued downward until we hit this bottom. And then the institutions brought it back up. And let's take a look at back in the history, because one of the questions that a lot of people have in the debate that's going on out there is where are we in the cycle? Is this like a 2017 bull trap or bear? Yeah, bull trap, 2017 bull trap. Or is this on this side of 2017 where we have this accumulation going on, had a little bit of a drop here and getting ready to do one final run to the blow off top? Some people don't think we got a blow off top. And what's interesting is people will say we didn't get a blow off top, so this can't be the end of the market. But at the same time, they'll say, well, Bitcoin doesn't have to do anything. It does whatever it wants. So the question is, do you have to have a blow off top like this to signify the end of a market? Well, let's take a look at what this looks like when you spread it out. So when you start to spread it out, it's not so much a blow off top. And then you get a couple of areas that are really interesting in terms of where we're at right now. You have the peak, you drop, little bounce, and then you have that continuation downward because you couldn't break back into that area of resistance. And then where do we see those double tops that can't bust this level of resistance? You see it right here. So after a little bit of a drop, you get a big rally right here at the bottom. So after this $20,000 peak, we dropped all the way down to 6,800. And this is back when I really entered the market, was that 2016, 2017 timeframe. Didn't really know much about crypto before then. That's when I got involved and started in, investing in trading and playing around with Bitcoin specifically, not really much else until this year and late last year after the March meltdown. But anyways, we're up here at 20. We come all the way down to the bottom. We rip back up. We are not able to break through that main level of support and that main level of resistance right here before the final capitulation. We could not break through that. We dropped, bounced back, tried it again and failed, and it was downhill from there until we found another bottom and started the trend back up. And you can see a couple of areas where we tried to break another level of support along the way where you had a top here with resistance, top here with resistance, tried to turn that into support. It didn't happen. So we continued to the downside and the bear market continued. So when you look at that scenario right here, it looks very similar and right here to what we are facing right now. When you look at this picture right here, it's a little bit different. This is more, could be seen more as consolidation. Some people are calling it a double top. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm just saying those are some areas that we've seen in the past. Another area that looks real familiar here is after we came down, you had a bounce, a little bit of that consolidation, then a drop. Came over here, had a bounce, a little bit of consolidation. So this could rip up or it could drop. So we really don't know until you break above this $50,000 level. And really more specifically, you got to get through the $59,000 level to really get through it and close above it, turn it into support. So this resistance right here at this $59,000, $60,000 level, if that gets broken and turned into support, you're off to the races and we're looking for an all-time high in Bitcoin. But until you get there, you have to expect and you have to prepare for this to fail, because right now, if we can't get through 50,000 and do the same thing and turn that into support and then start the range all over again, where we're in that 50 to 55,000, and then we step it up to 55 to 60,000, then you step it up to 60 to 65, then you can go, or this thing could just rip, as we've seen here. If the institutions can get the support and get the gunpowder put together from the altcoin market, this price could continue to rip. But then the question will be, how sustainable is that and how far it can go? Because there's not a lot of interest at 50,000 right now. Institutional buyers, hedge funds, investment funds, life companies, they're not going to buy $50,000 Bitcoin. They're not interested here because there's just not that much upside to them in their opinion and their perspective. And I know a couple of funds have projected $1 million Bitcoin, $100 million Bitcoin, things like that. And is that possible? Anything is possible, but it's not on the cards, and it's not in the cards or on the table right now when you can't break 50,000. So this is a big level right here, and it's a big issue that needs to be turned into support for this market to continue. So that's your answer right there. All you got to do is watch this level. And I know everybody's saying it, and I know it can be frustrating for the sideways action, but that's how markets work. They're there to, number one, discover price. Number two, create liquidity. Number three, stop out longs and shorts. Number four, frustrate retail traders, shake it out, ultimately discover what is a fair price, what's fair market value, what is our ultimate downside. One thing that institutional investors need to know, and the reason they're not going to buy at 50,000, because 60 days ago we were at 28,000, and they know what this action is. They know that's institutional driven to prop the price up, to bring them in. They know that's what's going on here, is that these large investors, large holders are keeping price propped up until we get regulatory clearance for the big institutions to come into the game. So they're trying to convince them that this is a good price point, that this 40 to 50,000 level is a good price point. And really, more specifically, our range has been 44, probably the low end of that, 42. So as long as you're above that $42,000 level, you're good. Anywhere between 42 and 50,000 is a good range to keep that in there. So a lot of this, the reason is why the larger investors are doing this could be to give confidence to the market, create price discovery, create a floor, perceived floor for Bitcoin, so that big institutions will get in, and then that could ultimately drive price up if they can keep the price propped up here. If they cannot keep price propped up here through liquidity created through the altcoin market, which could be good because that can continue to drive the altcoin market, but you're going to see a spike pullback, and watch the money flow as the capital flows out of Bitcoin into the altcoin market. They spike, altcoin markets pull back, liquidity flows back into Bitcoin, Bitcoin spikes. So it's kind of a back and forth. That's what's keeping the market pumped up, because every time we get here, we drop back off. It has to get pumped back up. So that could be what's going on. It could be that the large investors are keeping the market propped up until the institutional investors can get comfortable and understand that this could be potentially a floor. And that could be a great thing. If 50,000 becomes a floor for Bitcoin, that's huge. That is going to be really good for Bitcoin. And that's where you can see some really big numbers in the near future come out of Bitcoin, is if this can be turned into a floor of support that institutions and retail investors alike see as the last lowest level that Bitcoin can realistically get to. But right now, We're only 60 days removed from 28,000. And there's still a lot of technical analysis that will show you that Bitcoin can drop back down to those levels, with different technical analysts out there showing you that. I'm not a technical analyst. I'm not a technician. I'm a macro investor. I'm a swing trader. I move on the big moves like we saw here in Cardano. This was one of my trades right here. And then recently in Solana, I told you last week, or last video, where I exited Cardano. It was somewhere around, I think it was around the $2.40 area, somewhere around there, 250. I can't remember where I exited Cardano. Missed out on that last little bit, but that's okay. You don't want to get too greedy and try to ride every penny, because I can always re-enter on a pullback if it looks like Cardano is going to go up. Just like Solana, I could have stayed in this trade and waited for $200 Solana, but I know it's going to pull back. So I'm fine re-entering again around 70, 80 to $100 and riding that back up again. And you can ride this up and down as Solana kind of tries to figure itself out and find its ceiling. But I exited that today at 127.50. I think it was 127.50 is where I exited that today. So that was a nice little rip. So these are the types of things that I like to invest in. And if you look at that, that was a 23 to 126. I mean, that was a nice little rip right there. And unfortunately, Bitcoin just cannot provide those kind of returns right now. So it's not really interesting. So that's one of the issues that Bitcoin faces. It's just not making any big moves. Even if it does hit 100,000 from here, that's not really exciting. That's not getting anybody excited, because there's huge, huge gains in the altcoin market. So until the altcoin market is finished and cools off, you're not really going to see Bitcoin make huge, huge gains, because there's just too much to gain over here. The other thing to keep in mind is a lot of times when Bitcoin hits its peak, the altcoin market rips right after that. So what we've seen is Bitcoin kind of topping out temporarily at 50,000. The altcoins have been on a tear, but it's been pretty much the same time. They've been running pretty much the same time. When Bitcoin went on this rip, the altcoins were kind of behind it, but they're continuing to run a little bit. And a lot of times when Bitcoin tops out and finishes, altcoins will run for a couple of weeks afterwards, and then they'll start turning down if Bitcoin's turning down. So keep an eye on that. Watch the altcoins, watch Bitcoin. If Bitcoin starts dropping down below these levels of support right here, 46 is your first one, 44 is your next, 42 is your last resort of support, 42,000. You get below that level right here, that 42,000 level, and more specifically below 37, then 28,000 is back in play. But we've got a lot of support before we get there. That could take a whole lot of time unless we get some serious trouble in the traditional markets. That's the only thing that could really bring the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency markets down quickly, would be if traditional markets got into trouble. Right now, the Fed has not pulled the foot off the gas. They are still going to continue to prime the pump and keep the markets pumped up in the foreseeable future with their bond purchase. And they're not looking at tapering anytime soon. They're not talking about raising interest rates anytime soon. So they're keeping the pedal to the metal. That's going to keep all markets, all assets propped up for a while. So keep your eyes on that and watch this price action. If anything changes over the weekend, I'll pop out a quick video. But right now, I'm expecting more of the same, more ranging. Right now, more price discovery. Altcoins are continuing to rip up and down. So keep an eye on those. Your large cap alts first, your small caps behind that. DeFi has been on a tear. NFT markets have been on a tear. So keep an eye on those things. If you're playing with NFTs, be careful, because those are extremely volatile, serious bubble action going on there. And some of that stuff is just straight up money laundering. So just be aware of that and understand what you're getting into there. But you can also do pretty well on that kind of stuff right now as well. So interesting time, interesting space. Those are the things that I'm doing, and I'll keep you posted on that. I'm looking for my next altcoin. I keep saying altcoin. I'm waiting on my next altcoin rip to get into, because that's where the fun is. To watch something like that happen over 60 days is pretty incredible. And I don't need to get in right at the bottom or right at the top, as long as I can participate in that run and get those 100% or more gains. That's a lot of fun. 40, 50%. If you're doing that every day, that's okay. but over a couple of months, 200, 300, 400% is a lot of fun to get into. So hopefully we'll see some more of those before all of this cools off and things will continue to run. So with that, I am out, and I will bring you some updates if things change. I am expecting more of the same. Bitcoin should dip a little bit, find a little bit of support. And if the institutions want to continue the show, they'll rip it back up again, keep it propped up, and try to push it through that $50,000 level. But until that happens, and when that happens, we're going to continue with this ranging sideways between that. It looks like 47 and 50,000, 45, 50,000 range for a while. And the altcoin market will continue to provide some fantastic opportunities and returns. So with that, I will catch you on the next video.